have found the current housing market completely awful. I am homeless and have been for the past month. After approximately 3 months of trying to find a house, I have finally found accommodation. However, I can't move in until the end of October, so I will continue to be homeless and sleeping in hostels until then. While my university have been sympathetic to my situation, they have otherwise been useless and have only offered the multiple of us experiencing this situation no other option but that our full-time attendance is required, and if we miss classes, we risk not being allowed to continue our degree or graduate. As I'm sure you can imagine in today's climate, money is a big worry for many of us. Flying in and out of a different country weekly, sleeping in hostels, and having to buy food, etc. is very expensive and adds up quickly. I found nothing particularly useful when looking for a house, other than the fact that myself and several others were in the same situation, and at least that meant more of us could look for a house together. Agencies were extremely difficult and time-consuming, and websites such as Spare Rooms were overloaded with people looking for rooms as well as scammers. It is actually, I think, an even more sad fact that even though I am currently homeless, at least I don't have to worry about getting an electricity bill this month.
This is Selina from EUTV. Now we are having Tresha from Living Rent with us. Tresha, would you mind to explain what does this organization do a little bit to us?
Sure. Living Rent is a mass membership tenants union, Scotland's tenants union. Works similarly to a union that you would have in a workplace, apart from it's for tenants and not from employers. It represents members in the private and socially rented sector.
May I ask, what does Living Rent see as the major challenges now in Edinburgh for all the tenants?
I guess Living Rent's long-term campaign is for rent controls. We recently won a rent freeze that you might know about, which is a great step in the right direction, just freezing rents where they were, but long term it's really about bringing rents down.
You're saying that there is like this challenge imposed on students right now, and what do you think is the biggest challenge for students nowadays in Edinburgh, like facing this renting issues, right?
I think whilst I've been renting here privately over the last 3 years, it's become increasingly difficult to find a flat in the first place. Everyone recognises it as just issue that we have to get through, but I'd say personally it's gotten harder every single year. And whilst rents have been increasing, loans as well as wages haven't been increasing proportional to that. So it's just becoming tougher and tougher to find safe, affordable housing to live in.
And you are saying that there's a lot of work and changes that needs to be done. So what kind of work, does the government need to do, or does everyone need to do, like the landlord and the tenants? And what is the dream situation for a rental market in this, just in this place, Edinburgh?
I can give an example if that helps. So over the summer, one of our main campaigns in Edinburgh was against short-term lets, looking at the number of Airbnbs in the city. There's a ridiculous amount of Airbnbs that could be long-term homes, and instead of our short-term money-making lets. So there needs to be legislation to cap the amount of Airbnbs in the city. And there's multiple loopholes that landlords can go through to not have proper licenses to create these Airbnbs. So that legislation needs to be looked at. So, it's not just focused on profit, but focused on, long-term residents and the places they can live. I mean, the main campaign is for rent control, so it's not just about freezing rent, but it's actually about bringing rent down, which has to happen. There's just no way it can keep increasing in the way it can. It's completely unlivable the way it is. So,
who do you think is responsible for this housing situation nowadays across the UK, or to be particular in Edinburgh?
I'd say in Edinburgh particularly, a few landlords do have an increased monopoly on so many student homes. There's tens of landlords that own thousands of properties across the city that just have complete power over landlords, and that there's so much demand that the supply can really, really weaken. So what we're willing to put up with in terms of flats and the competition is insane. Student homelessness has increased so much in the last 3, 4, 5 years as rents have increased, and that's obviously no coincidence. So in terms of who's to blame, I'd say legislation definitely allows landlords to get away with a lot, and the power isn't in the tenants' hands, and that's what Living Rent's trying to fight for.
Do you think that university has a role in housing crisis, like what support they can provide to students, and just anything like that?
I mean, recently this year, I have friends who've been struggling to find flats, and the temporary accommodation that the university provides is sort of like in common rooms converted into dorm rooms. That's become a really big story. I have friends who have stayed in those dorm rooms and then they're moved to sort of PBSA, purpose-built student accommodation, which is a form of student housing that really is really, really expensive and doesn't serve the residents of the city or students. And I think private companies often try and use that as a methods to be like, we're doing things for students, but it's not affordable housing. It's also important to remember in Edinburgh that the University of Edinburgh is the largest landlord in the city. So they do own a lot of property. So in terms of their interests, anti-landlordism probably isn't in their general ethos. It does function as a business, but I think obviously there should be an inherent caretaker role when you're admitting people to university to make sure that this university campus is somewhere they could live and live affordably, and I don't think that work is being done at all, just because of like the rushed manner I've seen that this temporary accommodation is being sort of given in with no long-term, where will these students go after this 3 weeks? It's all very rushed. So the university definitely has a responsibility to look after students that pay an extortionate amount of fees and have to live in the city to, do their degree. And I don't think that accountability is really being taken yet.
I think there's a few housing cooperatives in Edinburgh, but we are a student cooperative, and there's lots of student cooperatives kind of all over the world, but what makes us different is that we're consensus decision making.
So it's 106 members. We operate across 2 different buildings that we lease just from they're called CRE, a housing company lease place. We operate entirely consensually, so we like split into like different working groups, like operate different things like finance, like welfare, like legal stuff, all that kind of thing, and everyone puts in a certain number of hours of work in the week in their particular role to do it, and we host meetings like both within those working groups and in like general meetings every couple of weeks usually as well, and that's all done by consensual decision making, so like there's no majority voting or anything, like it just everyone needs to be happy with what's being done, if it is going to be done.
I feel like it's just nice not being like subjected to like a landlord. That's like the main difference between here and like a private flat. Like last year I lived in a private flat in Marchmont, and the landlord had complete control over our situation. We had no say in what the flat was like, and if something needed to be fixed we just had to wait. We couldn't do it ourselves, we weren't even allowed to. And the landlord obviously has control over the rent, and they can increase it each year even if nothing's changed, which I know a lot of my friends have experienced. And here, like, it's, that would be a consensual decision and everyone would know about it in advance.
So what made each of you guys want to apply to live in the co-op?
I think I kind of realised that like searching for a flat just wasn't worth it. Like a private flat, it's too much effort, it's too competitive, and you don't get anywhere fast. So I realised that like applying for here is quite an easy process and it's very fair. Like everyone has a fair chance of getting in, and like it's based on who's sort of like a best fit and who would fit each role and things like that. And it was just so much more straightforward and relaxing than like looking for a flat in Edinburgh. It's just getting worse. So I'm glad I did this year.
The attractiveness of like having agency and kind of ownership over the space that you're in, just the fact that everyone here like will directly responsible for running it. It means that everyone has a stake and kind of as a proxy as well. That means that the social life is really, really nice. There's like a wonderful sense of community here.
I was in a position where I had like nowhere to live, and I knew people that lived here, and they said it was really cool. And I'd been a few times to check it out, and it seemed really cool. And the one thing I remember was that the rooms were decorated really nicely. So yeah, I think part of it being like you can do sort of what you like with the space.
It's mainly the community here. Like, there's just so many people that are kind of like, we're all quite similar in kind of our mindset and like morals, so that it makes living with other people really easy. The universities and the council should be putting more money into leasing buildings to students and giving, like, trusting in them that they can set up something that works, because this has been going for like 8-9 years, and I mean it's working.
It's something that gives you more responsibility in the place that you live, because you know that everything you do sort of directly affects not only yourself but then all 100 plus other people. So you want to make sure that whatever it is you do is like cool and safe and creative and looks nice. And it also, I think, gives you more responsibility in terms of the roles that you get. And a lot of the time, I think most of the time the roles are really like directly rewarding.
I think it's really important that like more initiatives like this start, especially now because of the the housing crisis and the cost of living crisis. And like by living here, we have more control of like our situation with that. Like I don't think we're as affected by it as most people are in terms of like finding this place to live and living here itself. We have like more autonomy and in how we run the building and living here. And I don't know, I think this is a good time to live somewhere like this.
In reality, it is difficult because, like, obviously we are limited to just 106 members, so it requires someone moving out to for there to be a space available, and as well, even just before like the housing crisis started, like say in a single, say like in June, September, when there's usually about 30 places or so popping up, we tend to get like 130 people applying for that period. So at that point, like, you do like a whole voting thing of who gets in and who doesn't, but eventually it does just need to be like random.
Every student at the uni knew at least some other student who are currently struggling to find a flat and haven't been helped by the uni.
While aware of this rising housing issue, the university continued to accept more and more students year by year.
The university currently has no plans on how to help second semester students with their housing.
I've been Selina.
I've been Susu.
And I've been Francesca.